Disabilities Issues and Updates on BCTV is supported by the Berks County Center for Independent Living, Abilities in Motion.
Hello and welcome to Disability Issues and Updates. My name is Teresa Faulkner and I am your host. We want to send out well wishes to Beth Setterly, who is under the weather. We miss you and feel better soon. Today we have a guest, Brianna McGovern, who is a new employee at Abilities in Motion, and she is our disability resource person. Brianna, it's wonderful to have you at our show today.
Thank you for having
Welcome,
me.
welcome. So excited to have you at our show, not only our show, but at Abilities in Motion.
Thank
It
you.
has been a pleasure. We want to start our show with Brianna talking about her life. She's going to talk about some of the challenges and so forth that she's had. So we're going to have just wonderful conversation, and then get your pencils and paper because we have some special events that are coming up, and we want you to be able to write it down so that you can make contact with us at Abilities in Motion. So Brianna, with that, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I've been with AIM now since I believe April 4th. So I am what is called a congenital amputee, which basically means I was born missing limbs. So I was born missing my right arm, my right leg, and I have an underdevelopment in my left leg. So I've been born disabled, so it's something that I've learned to adapt with over the years. And my family consists of a mix of able-bodied people, physically disabled people, and those with intellectual disabilities. So my parents always made sure that we grew up in the disability community to make sure that we never felt alone. And I think that's kind of shaped who I am today and what my aspirations for in life are, and that's what's led me to this moment today.
So with your family having able-bodied and those that had disabilities, what was the house like?
Chaotic, very chaotic. My parents, God bless them, my parents always took care of foster care children. We do medical missions kids from people from other countries, so primarily through places like Burkina Faso. We've had a couple of kids from the Congo, the Philippines, and they come here to America for free medical care, and we house them, we take care of them while they're here receiving the best care possible, and then we return them to their families, and sometimes we get repeat kids over the years. So at any point, so I have 6 siblings.
Okay.
So the house would always range from anywhere from 6 to 9 children at a time, all underage, and then of course as the older children got older, they left the house, but we always had new siblings, what we call new siblings in the house. So we were always very, very busy. You know, I think my parents really wanted to take care of children, and I think that's a really good thing.
That is. So what were the dynamics, able-bodied and those with disabilities? How did your parents handle the two differences?
So it's actually basically through the foster care system. So my parents have 3 biological children that were all able-bodied. My mom always knew from when she was young that she wanted to have a lot of children.
Okay.
So my mom started out doing foster care. My younger sister was the one adopted first, and she has a more of like, I want to say like a learning disability. So she is more physically abled. And then I was adopted, of course, and I'm adopted from Taiwan, so I was the first internationally adopted child in the family. And then over the years, as my mom continued to do foster care and learning that she wants to increase the family, so 2 of us are from the foster care system in America, and 3 of us were from the foster care system.
Okay.
I'm the only one that was internationally adopted.
Okay.
But I think my mom just, over the years, you know, foster care is great, but I think she really wanted to spread the love and, you know, build our family to where it is now. And disabilities was never an important thing to her. So I think she just kind of went out and searched for kids who really needed loving family, and then you know, that's how we got our siblings.
That's wonderful. That is so wonderful. I was thinking about when you were saying that you came from, where was it again?
I'm from Taiwan.
From Taiwan. What was the traveling like? I know there are many viewers who kind of feel like they can't travel, they can't go different places, maybe because of their chairs or maybe because of the different things that they would need to travel. Hit on that a little bit and tell me what that's kind of like for you. Now, how old were you when you came from Taiwan?
When I came from Taiwan, I was about 2 3/4.
Okay.
So the process, the orphanage in Taiwan is actually an American-owned orphanage. It's called Christian Salvation Services, and they connected with my mother. And what happened was they took a representative from the orphanage, flew me out to California. My mom flew out to California. We kind of met halfway, and then she brought me home. So because I was so small, it was very easy to just pick me up and travel with me. But as we gotten older, and of course with all of the children with disabilities, we had wonderful opportunities to work with organizations like Dreams Come True, Make-A-Wish, that were able to provide these like vacation trips for us. And so, of course, every child wanted to go to Disney.
Yes, most definitely.
Lots of trips to Florida. And the great thing about organizations like that is they primarily work with people who are disabled or have terminal illnesses. And so they worked out, of course, all of the handicap accessibility, transportation, and of course, every person is different in terms of needing for travel. So because all of the physically disabled children at the time were very small, it was very easy for my parents to just pick us up, and then I believe the wheelchairs and things were always stored in like the belly of the plane and things like that. I haven't been able to travel much as an adult. But I think that would be quite the learning experience, because that is something I'd like to do one day. And what is the process for people with disabilities? Of course, for hotels and things like that, you do want to make sure that you call ahead and make sure that they give you a handicap accessible hotel room. And there are things like Uber and Lyft and things like that that you have to, of course, let them know ahead of time that you have some type of disability. So you want to make sure you get the right cars and things like that. But that is a learning process that I hopefully will be able to get through at one point in my life.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, you went to school because you said you came at 2. You went to regular school?
I went to public school.
Okay, okay. And what was that adjustment like?
It's very interesting. So I know my mom struggled. So my parents always wanted to make sure that all of the disabled children learned that we were no different than anybody else.
Wow.
That we could live an independent life, and they treated us as such. So we were still expected to work at age 16, whether it's volunteer or you get a paying job and things like that. So I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Take your time. So we were talking about elementary, and then you went to high school.
Yeah, so my mom never really wanted us to feel like we had to rely on other people growing up. So my mom really had to work with the school district and push for me to be able to, let's say, travel through the hallways. So I didn't need a school aid. I never had one. I think I had one a little bit temporarily, but my mom really had to push through the school system to say she doesn't need school aid. She could carry her books by herself. She can, go, carry her lunch by herself. And believe it or not, the school system really fought us over the years and letting us not need these handicap, these accessibilities or these modifications. And as even today, with the kids that we have from Africa that thankfully are able to get some schooling here while they're with us, the school system really tries to push and make sure, we don't want them to injure themselves. Like if we have a walker and things like that, we don't want her walking. We'd really rather have her sit in a wheelchair. And that's not the message that we want to send to kids with disabilities. Here we have children that are wanting to push and push themselves and be independent. And these school systems, even today, are saying, nope, we want to take the safe route. We want these children, it's all about the liability. We don't want any liability in our school district. And not that my parents are the type of people.
So it really was a process, especially for your parents, to actually advocate on your behalf and your other family members' behalf so that you could be the most independent that you possibly could be.
Absolutely. Of course, the modifications that school systems offered are phenomenal for those who really need it. And my parents always knew in the back of their minds that we didn't really need it. They knew what we could do to our extent.
Yes.
And I believe in the philosophy of if you know that you can do it, go for it.
Okay.
You shouldn't have the modifications are great for those who really need it. If you don't need it, why use it if you can
Right.
push yourself further?
Wonderful. Not only did she go to elementary school, high school, Brianna actually attended college. Let's talk a little bit about that.
I did. I went to the Kutztown University of Pennsylvania, and I graduated with a degree in communication studies and a minor in psychology.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, let's talk about prior jobs that you might have had. I know you can't mention names, but what was your position like when you worked prior to Abilities in Motion?
So I started working when I was in high school, and I worked at a Taco Bell
Oh,
for
okay.
most of my high school career and a little bit in college until transportation and things got to be too much. And that was an interesting experience because it was the first job that gave me a chance. So one of the things that I learned very quickly, there are certain positions, not that they can say it legally as the reason for why they don't hire me, but disability definitely affects your ability to be hired at certain places. So I was very grateful to this specific Taco Bell branch. And I started out as just, doing desk orders
Okay.
or back at the drive-through, but then it slowly increased to maybe helping clean up some dishes,
Oh,
doing
okay.
some cleaning around the areas. But so in terms of things like I was not allowed to do food, and again, it's going
Okay.
back to the liability.
Yes,
they were
yes.
afraid that I would get injured and that I would push to get some type of compensation for it.
Was there a situation at Taco Bell where they actually had to do reasonable accommodations?
So for this specific Taco Bell, no. But I
None.
know because for the most part, it was actually fairly handicap accessible.
Okay.
If they needed to lower something, they could, or if somebody wanted to help me, let's say, reach a stack of cups or something, they could. But if I didn't ask for it, they didn't give it to me.
Oh,
But I
okay.
know that they would be willing to do so if they needed to.
Okay.
So I think as I've gotten older, I always try to make sure I let people know, not right away, because I don't want my disability to speak for my actions.
Okay.
What I usually do is like a pre-interview, or I never state a disability and things like my resume, because I want my achievements and my abilities to speak for themselves. But once we get to the interview process, I will be very upfront and I say, look, I do have a physical disability, and I'll stress to them that it does not impair my ability to work for you. But I will need, let's say, certain modifications. So maybe big enough for my wheelchair, or I don't really need modified equipment or anything like that, but in terms of travel, I'd have to take the bus. If the bus is, the bus might be late,
Right,
or
right.
snow situation. So it's important to let somebody, your place of employment, know that you have a disability, but it's all about spinning on what you can do.
What you can do.
don't ever want to focus on what you can't do.
Okay.
And things like that.
So when you're presenting yourself at an interview, you always want to focus on what I can do.
What you can do.
What you can do. Wonderful, wonderful. Now, my question to you is, because of the fact you have a physical disability, they could actually see it. Did that ever come up in the interview?
I'm sorry.
They can see your disability. They can see that you have a disability.
Yes.
Did that ever come up in the interview? Did they ask you questions? Did they ask you different things?
Not
at all?
Not really. I actually don't know if it's legal for them to ask
Okay,
about it.
okay.
Now, the last couple of places of employment I've worked at were all disability based. So
okay.
before Abilities in Motion, I worked for Envision Human Services,
Okay.
which is a home care company for those with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
Okay.
So in cases like this, I was actually able to take my disability and use it to
Your advantage.
my advantage,
Yeah,
kind of,
yeah.
because I can relate. I can't relate necessarily to those with intellectual or developmental disabilities, but I grew up with a brother, two brothers actually, who had intellectual disabilities to a certain extent, and so as long as you're willing to voluntarily give that information, I do not believe employers are allowed to ask about your disability unless you're willing to bring it up yourself. And of
Okay.
course, then it opens up the door to further conversation if that's needed. But I think legally, if they don't
cannot.
bring it up, they can't tell you.
Absolutely, absolutely. From that job, you worked at that job in a home care setting, is that correct?
So
But
I worked in an office setting.
Oh,
So
okay.
I was the maintenance supervisor, and Envision has in both regions anywhere from, I want to say, 65 to closer to 70 different groups, and they're essentially group homes. It's
Okay.
not labeled group homes
Okay.
by the state, but anywhere from 1 to 2 individuals who, of course, have a direct support professional care system.
Sure.
So my job was to make sure that the housing that they lived in was accommodating to the, because of course the requirement is intellectual and developmental disabilities, but with that often comes physical disabilities. And so my job was to basically make sure that the house, of course, was labeled safe by the state,
Okay.
but also make sure that their houses were modified to fit their physical needs. So if we
Sure.
need to make modifications to your doorways, or if we need to, let's say you have a progressive disability, we need to put ramps in your home, we'll put ramps in your home to make
Sure.
sure that you can get in and out safely.
Wonderful. And not only did she work in the office, but you had people that worked under you. You supervised.
Yes.
How many places did you supervise, Brianna?
Currently, just one.
Just one.
2 if you want to include abilities in motion. So
Uh-huh.
Envision gave me my first opportunity to have a supervising role. And I didn't start out that way. I actually
Okay.
started out as an admin assistant.
Oh.
And then I kind of worked my way up in about 6 months to supervisor level. And thankfully, in cases like that, I worked with a very small department, max of 4 people, 3 maintenance technicians, and my own admin assistant, of course, once I moved up. And I think that actually kind of helped a little bit, that I could start out as an admin role and work my way up to supervision, because I already built a rapport with the people that I worked with that worked underneath me. And so I was able to kind of learn what my supervision skills were going to
Okay.
be like. And that's like, I like to function as a family, of course, making sure that we stick by to what the company
Sure.
requires of us, but then also I learned how to build proper relationships with, I don't like calling them subordinates, but
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to let our viewers know a little secret. Brianna actually supervises me at Abilities in Motion. She really helps us understand different resources, things that are available to persons. She really is an advocate for a person with disabilities. She really advocates, and she's good at what she does, and she's a wonderful communicator. She is good. Let's talk a little bit about persons are listening to you, they're seeing you, you're talking about some of the barriers and so forth that you had. What were 1 or 2 barriers that kind of overwhelmed you as a person with a disability? Was there anything you came upon while you were in college or recreation? Any type of barriers that you had to actually say in your mind, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get through this, I'm going to be an example for others. Any barriers like that, Brianna?
I think throughout my whole life I've always had barriers. So because I was born with a disability, my whole life has been a series of adaptations. So the good thing with my parents is they always try to make sure that, you know, we did recreation events and things. Like, they wanted to make us feel like regular kids. So we went through, like, I used to do ballet as a child, which of course it wasn't an adapted program per se, but they were able to modify ballet so that I could participate. And then there are organizations like the Miracle League Baseball, and we went through Lehigh Valley and Northampton County, and that's an organization that specifically provides baseball games to those with disabilities. So the platform is wheelchair safe turf. Everybody gets a buddy that they could help bat or they can play with out in the field. And then just as I've gotten older, of course, I touched on the adaptations we needed through school.
Yes.
The the biggest adaptation I needed was when I graduated college, and I realized that I didn't want to move back home.
Okay.
And what was I going to do in terms of living situation? So of course my parents instilled in us that working mindset. So I had to get a job, of course, which is not abnormal, but what is the process for finding an apartment that is ADA accessible? And of course then there's the insurance aspect. So because I am the first adult child to experience issues with insurance and things like that. So it's not even something that my mother could try and help me with, because we both don't know what the processes were from going for things like Medicaid and what happens when you turn 18 and what the limits are in terms of Medicaid. And so the biggest struggle was trying to see, as someone who uses durable medical equipment, which is super duper expensive, if you don't have Medicaid, what are your options?
Right.
And so that's been the biggest learning curve, is finding, all right, I have adaptations that I do need that requires me to live full quality of life, but I don't have the means and the funds to do it. So what are my next options?
I got you.
And that's kind of where that's the biggest struggle that I've gone through, and so far in my young life.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I don't know if anybody had an opportunity, but this weekend I was watching the Special Olympics that was held in Orlando, Florida. I saw runners, I saw gymnasts, I saw persons who worked on the parallel bars. It was just a wonderful program. It was just a wonderful event. And I remember one of the participants saying that you can do this. Don't sit at home thinking I can't. You can do this. And I'm sure Brianna feels the same way. Don't let yourself get in that mindset that you can't do this. Get in your mindset, I want to do this, and what are the avenues I need to take?
Absolutely. That's the great thing about what I love about Abilities in Motion is our main goal for people with disabilities is we always are going to push self-advocacy.
Yes.
We always want to make sure we want to put that ball back in their court, because we never want people to feel unempowered. We want them to feel like they have control in certain aspects of their life. And that's the mindset that my parents both pushed me to do, and I love that Abilities in Motion also pushes that same mindset, which is you can do it. You can do it. And if you can't do it, we're going to find ways for you to be able to get to that point.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to soon be out of time, but we definitely want to share Abilities in Motion is having 2 recreation or events, and we want to let our viewers know what's going on. The first event is, go ahead and tell them, Brianna.
So our first event is, and I know Chris Kegg touched on this last month, we have our first ever I'm in Motion event in partnership with the I Am Able Foundation. And this is going to be basically a day where you can learn about different types of recreation. So Chris on his end is going to be having hand cycling demos, exercise classes. I think he has his I'm Able or I'm Fit classes.
Okay.
And Abilities in Motion is going to be providing a recreation resource guide, and we're also going to have a sensory area for those. So we're going to have different activities at our sensory area with our youth transitions coordinator. And then we have organizations coming in such as the Greater Reading Mental Health Alliance, which is going to touch base on how you can support yourself mentally and how to relax in ways. We're going to have Berks Parks and Recreation as well. Easter Seals is going to be present as well, so that they can provide their resources.
Sure.
And then Lancaster Recumbent is going to be providing the hand cycling demos.
Wonderful. If you're interested in that event, please give us a call. If the flyer went away too fast or you have questions, it is a free event. And then there's something actually going to take place in July. Tell us a little bit about that.
We have our 3rd annual ADA Art show that we're hosting at the Goggle Works, I think for the 2nd or 3rd time this year.
Yes.
That will be July 25th through the 30th. We're currently taking artist applications until June 30th. And then it is a juried selection, so of course exception letters will go out sometime in July. And then we will be hosting a public reception on July 25th from 4 to 6, where people can come, meet the artists, have some light refreshments, learn about adapted arts and things like that.
If you're interested in being a part of that art show, just call Abilities in Motion, ask to speak to Brianna McGovern. She's in charge of that, and we sure look forward to seeing each of you. Brianna, this was a wonderful segment.
Thank
This
you for
was
having
just
me.
wonderful. We appreciate you coming and sharing with our viewers, and we hope in the near future, as they see you around the community, that they will be empowered just like you were empowered to be the most independent that you can be. Thank you so much for joining our show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Disabilities Issues and Updates on BCTV is supported by the Berks County Center for Independent Living, Abilities in Motion.